may be the greatest catch I've ever seen in my life.
Y'all destroyed the video yesterday. So we are going to be doing the same exact thing here, where we go through and we are going to be looking at some under the radar losers from the NFL draft and overall the NFL offseason up until this point. And no, we are not going to be talking about the obvious players. We're not going to be talking about Melvin Gordon. We're not going to be talking about James Robinson, because those are names that everybody knows. We've already discussed those on this channel, and you really don't need to hear those over and over and over again. Instead, I'm going to be bringing you a list of names that maybe you haven't heard, and maybe you kind of disagree with me on a few of these players. And if that's the case, please go down to the comment section and don't just let me know I'm stupid for saying a player's name. Let me know why you think that they aren't a loser. Let me know what you think of my analysis and where exactly it went wrong. But yeah, I would love to hear your opinion in the comment section below, but make sure you're giving me an explanation why you think that one of these players did not lose any value, or you did not think that any of these players lost anything with their projected production for this upcoming season. But before we get into it, I have a very exciting announcement. So y'all know that over on Patreon, I've been trying to come up with something that we can all kind of celebrate how many people have been joining the flock over there. And of course, I mean, we do so many things on Patreon every single day, and I really want to thank everybody who has joined up to date. And because of that, we are going to be setting a goal. Once we get 400 people supporting the channel on Patreon, we are going to be launching a high stakes Dynasty Fantasy Football League and a high stakes redraft Fantasy Football League that is going to be exclusive for Patreon members. And one of the spots in the league is going to be a giveaway. It's going to be a giveaway for the people supporting the show on Patreon, and it's going to be a $500 league. So what that means is those $500 dues, you're not going to be paying them. I'm going to be covering it, and you're just going to be kind of playing in a free roll challenge. So that's exciting. I mean, that's a shot to go and possibly just say half the pot there is going to be $3,000. So yeah, I'm excited to announce that. I am hoping that we can get those going sometime early this summer. But yeah, let's get into it, and let's dive into Jonathan Taylor right out the gate. And so here with Jonathan Taylor, I know that this is a name you probably have not heard a single time as a loser of the offseason. But I think that with Jonathan Taylor, if you look at everything that Indianapolis has done, it really doesn't bode well for the overall production of the Indianapolis Colts offense. Now, I'm going to be the first person to say that Jonathan Taylor is one of the most talented running backs in the entire NFL. I mean, if Jonathan Taylor was in this 2021 draft class, he would have easily been the running back one. I mean, he was an elite prospect. He was fantastic his rookie season. So you can't take too much away from Jonathan Taylor. He is currently going pretty high in drafts. He's a mid-first round pick. Some people are taking him over players like Derrick Henry, and I aggressively had Jonathan Taylor ranked in that range at the very beginning of the offseason. But through NFL free agency, you see Indianapolis, they don't do much to upgrade their overall offense. I was really hoping that they could bring in a Will Fuller. I was really hoping that they could just continue to add to the offensive line. Yet instead, you see this team to decide to invest into the defensive side of the ball, which obviously is smart for the Indianapolis Colts. But at the end of the day, it should drive down the overall efficiency of the offense that we can expect and the overall production to go along with it. Because you look at what they did in the NFL draft, and with their first round pick, they decide to take an edge rusher. With their second round pick, they go defensive end, and they don't have a third round pick. So by the time you're getting to day 3, we already know that those prospects really aren't going to impact anything year one. I mean, they did go out and get Sam Ehlinger, so hook them. We can say that. But nonetheless here, Jonathan Taylor, a running back that we love, but Indianapolis doesn't do anything to improve his situation going into 2021. You could make the argument that Carson Wentz has the potential to be significantly worse than what Phillip Rivers was last season. And I know, guys, people are going to be down in the comment section telling me that Carson Wentz is going to be going back to his MVP type form. And yes, that's in the range of outcomes. It's completely possible that Wentz gets reunited with the head coach in Indianapolis, and he finally fixes Carson Wentz, and we see Jonathan Taylor playing one of the best offenses in football. But we can also say it's possible that Carson Wentz comes to Indianapolis, and he is one of the worst starting quarterbacks in the entire NFL, just like he was in 2020, given the fact that Indy right now isn't overloaded with weapons. I mean, if you look at their wide receiver room, probably one of the worst wide receiver rooms in the entire NFL, with an extremely inefficient T.Y. Hilton, with Paris Campbell, who can't manage to stay healthy, and with Michael Pittman, who wasn't a great wide receiver prospect coming out of that 2020 NFL draft class. Okay, so now let's go to a player that I mentioned in our mock draft video the other day, but let's talk about Mark Andrews here. And so I know that with all the passing game additions that Baltimore has had, you've heard a ton of people coming out and saying, hey, Hollywood Brown, a massive loser. Hollywood Brown, someone you have to lower down your rankings. And while I agree that you have to lower Hollywood down slightly, I think that people are kind of just missing everything here. And that we know Hollywood Brown is a wide receiver that was never going to win off of volume. We know that he has elite speed, and with that speed comes elite efficiency if he is going to be productive at the NFL level. Well, we did not see that efficiency last year, so I do not think that you can say there's going to be a drastic difference from season to season with Hollywood. But what you can say is the tight end on the team, the tight end in Mark Andrews, who we kind of liked just because even if this offense had no passing volume to go around, they had no wide receivers to take targets. So it looked like Mark Andrews was going to get consistently targeted as one of the best tight ends in the entire NFL. Well, now they bring in Rashad Bateman, they bring in Tylan Wallace, they sign Sammy Watkins to a very big contract, and you're kind of looking at this situation going, okay, so clearly Hollywood is stretching the field, and it looks like Rashad Bateman may be playing that prototypical X wide receiver role, and it looks like Bateman may be getting significantly more targets than we would initially have expected from Sammy Watkins in that same role. So if that's the case, I think you have to lower down Mark Andrews, not significantly, but he can't be close to the Darren Waller, the Travis Kelce, the George Kittle tier like he was last year. Instead, he is down there, in my opinion, below guys like TJ Hawkinson. And I think that if you would have asked me before the NFL draft, I would have said I'd probably prefer Mark Andrews over Hawkinson for 2021. But at this point, I am unsure about that. Okay, so now let's go to a wide receiver that is my guy. Y'all know that I have him in so many dynasty leagues. I drafted him everywhere last redraft season as well. Let's talk about JuJu SmithSchuster. Okay, so I know that people are going to be hearing Juju and they're going to be going, Mason, what the hell are you talking about? But essentially, you're looking at Pittsburgh adding two options in Najee Harris and Pat Freiermuth, who should have an extremely low average depth of target, but should get targets in the case of Harris coming out of the backfield, in the case of Pat more so just running off as that blocking tight end, maybe usage at the goal line. And we're going, okay, neither one of these guys are going to be the deep threat, clearly. So they're not going to be really taking away too many targets from a Deontay Johnson or Chase Claypool when we saw both of those wide receivers have a slightly higher average depth of target compared to JuJu SmithSchuster last year. So I think that you do have some more offensive weapons coming in. Maybe the addition of a blocking tight end and that 3-down running back indicates that they don't want Ben Roethlisberger throwing the ball as much as he has in recent past. So maybe we have the overall passing volume for the offense going down, and you have some more players that can get targets in the shallower areas of the football field where JuJu SmithSchuster mainly operates. So yes, he's my guy. Yes, it hurts to say, but we have to be objective here. I have to try to look at this situation as just a regular person rather than a JuJu SmithSchuster fan. So I think we can call him a loser. Now, our next player is going to be going back to the tight end position, and this is going to be Evan Engram. Now, with Evan Engram, he's another player that, yes, I have liked Evan Engram before. I mean, I have been high on Engram, but you can't look at what this offseason has brought and view it as a good thing. Because not only do you add Kyle Rudolph, another tight end who I know Evan Engram is significantly better than, but we saw how Kyle Rudolph took away some snaps and some targets from Irv Smith Jr. last offseason. So I think now when you're looking at Evan Engram, you could see the same thing happening with Kyle Rudolph coming in. Not only do they bring in Rudolph, but more importantly, they bring in Kenny Golladay, who now presumably is the top red zone option for this team. And that's where Evan Engram was supposed to bring a lot of value. He was supposed to bring a lot of value in being pretty much that massive slot tight end that was going to be running a ton of routes, and he's that big body in the red zone. But now that they have another guy with a similar frame in Kenny Golladay, I think you have to be a little bit worried that the overall targets in the red zone could go down for Evan Engram, and that is going to be something you have to take note of. And lastly, they spent another first-round pick on bringing in Kadarius Toney. And while I don't love Kadarius Toney, you're just looking around, you're going, okay, so Evan Engram wasn't productive when there was nobody in New York last year to take targets away from him. Now you add a first-round wide receiver. You add one of the better wide receivers in the NFL in Kenny Golladay. And you add a Jag tight end who's probably going to be getting at the very least some snaps and some targets. So yeah, Evan Engram has to be on the decline. Now our next wide receiver that lost a significant amount of value this offseason is going to be Terry McLaurin. And y'all know when Curtis Samuel was signed to Washington, I came out and I said, hey guys, I actually don't mind this for Terry McLaurin because Curtis Samuel's not the wide receiver you're expecting to see a ton of targets. He's more so someone that possesses that speed, someone that is a little bit more dynamic, where opposing defensive coordinators are going to have to be creative in how they try to guard Washington. Yet now they bring in yet again another wide receiver in Dyami Brown. And Dyami Brown's honestly not someone that I love, but at the end of the day, you can't look at this situation where they bring in two wide receivers that have a decent amount of investment going into them, and looking at Terry McLaurin, a wide receiver that has had a very high target share over the past 2 seasons, and you can't project that same type of volume. It's just not happening. Now, the efficiency may go up because Terry McLaurin's going into year 3, so naturally he should continue to progress, as well as you have Dyami Brown and Curtis Samuel taking away some of the defensive attention. But like I talk about all the time in fantasy, you want to be chasing volume. You want to be going volume, volume, volume. And when the efficiency is there, that's great. That's how you access an elite ceiling, but it's not something you want to be chasing. Okay, so now our next player is going to be at that tight end position yet again. It's going to be Mike Gesicki, another very athletic tight end, another tight end that looks like he could have been George Kittle, but it's just not working out in Miami. And it sucks to say because he is very, very young, and we know that this is something you see all the time at the tight end position. I mean, it takes a while to develop, and I know that I have not heard really anybody else say this, so I'm probably wrong, and I would love your opinion in the comment section. But I saw the trade up to that number 6 pick by Miami as them going, you know what? We think that there's a decent chance we get Kyle Pitts here. I mean, I do not think that they would have traded that 12th pick in a future first just to guarantee themselves Jalen Waddle. Because with that 12th pick, I think if you look at how the draft board would have probably shaken out, they would have had a shot at either Jalen Waddle or Devontae Smith. Now you can sit here and you can go, yeah, but Waddle has more value to the Dolphins because he brings more speed and that's going to unlock more for Tua in the overall offense. But you have to ask yourself, okay, even if you think Jalen Waddle is slightly better at the NFL level, is it worth the extra first-round pick that they would have paid? I don't think so. So I think that they most likely moved up to get Kyle Pitts, knowing that Cincinnati was going to be drafting Jamar Chase at 5. That didn't happen, and they decide to then follow it up with taking another tight end in the 3rd round in Hunter Long, someone that was really on nobody's radar to go in that range. So I think that this shows us that a coaching staff that was not in Miami at the time Mike Gesicki was drafted really has no plans on using Mike Gesicki as a feature tight end going forward, which definitely has to hurt his fantasy value. I mean, how can it not? So now let's go over to some quarterbacks, and let's start it off with Ryan Tannehill. So with Ryan Tannehill, I mean, he has had a very bad offseason. Not only do you have JuJu Smith leaving, not only do you have Corey Davis gone, but you have the offensive coordinator going to Atlanta as well, and you really don't see Tennessee do much to help Ryan Tannehill with the loss of all these weapons that he had. I mean, the first skill positional player that they decided to draft in 2021 was Des Fitzpatrick in the 4th round. And while I think you can probably be a little bit excited about Des Fitzpatrick as a late round flyer in a dynasty format, I think that if we're talking his real NFL impact for 2021 in this overall offense with Ryan Tannehill, I mean, I would be very surprised if he does anything. I think that Josh Reynolds is going to be mainly the guy on the field playing alongside A.J. Brown. So if you're only adding Des Fitzpatrick, a wide receiver that really isn't going to project to do anything in 2021, I mean, I think that's a bad look for Ryan Tannehill. And now another faller, and I know that this is going to be the most hate we get because for some reason, everybody and their mom is a Chicago Bears fan. I don't know how we attract all the Chicago Bears fans, but Justin Fields has to be a loser here. I mean, Justin Fields was being talked about as being a quarterback that was going to be a top 3 overall draft pick at the very beginning of the offseason. A lot of people thought he was going to be going to New York. And then when that was clearly going to be Zach Wilson, a lot of people thought that Justin Fields was going to end up going to San Francisco, including myself. And I was very excited about him checking the box of having that elite pedigree going into the NFL at the quarterback position. And guys, I understand that you can point to Patrick Mahomes being drafted at 10. You can point to Deshaun Watson being drafted in that same range. Yet, what you need to understand is for every Tom Brady, for every Patrick Mahomes, for every Deshaun Watson, there are so many other quarterbacks that are drafted in that range that do not work out. So instead of just pointing to a few outliers, what we need to do is we need to instead look at the large sample and try to evaluate what the likelihood of Justin Fields actually hitting in his rookie season is. And I think it's pretty low given the situation. I mean, he is going to a Chicago Bears team, which yes, has Allen Robinson, and Allen Robinson is an elite wide receiver. We will say that right away. You look at what Allen Robinson did with Blake Bortles, with Mitchell Trubisky, and Allen Robinson is one of the most impressive wide receivers in the entire NFL. Yet in Chicago, they also have a poor offensive line, according to PFF grades from last year and projected going into this season. Also, they do not have a significant wide receiver 2 option. Now, I know a lot of people are going to come out and go, Mason, you're underrating Darnell Mooney. Oh my God, guys. You're really going to try to tell me that Darnell Mooney is an average to above average wide receiver 2 on an NFL offense? Just go through the list of NFL teams. Look at their wide receiver 2 compared to Darnell Mooney. They do the same thing with their wide receiver 3. I mean, you cannot sit here and tell me with a straight face without lying to yourselves or without having a Bears jersey on yourself that Chicago is a great situation for a rookie quarterback. It is simply not. They have at the very best an average offensive line. They have at the very best an average wide receiver room. They have at the very best an average coaching staff. So that's what you're excited about. In reality, they're probably going to be below average across the board, and they're going to be having to completely rely on what Justin Fields can do just based on his own talent. And in that scenario, I think that while, yes, he does have upside, yes, he can turn into Deshaun Watson, I think that we can safely say that the likelihood of him turning into Deshaun Watson is a lot lower than what most people want to make it out to be. So yeah, I mean, he has to be a loser from the NFL draft. Not only does he fall in the draft past a lot of teams that needed a quarterback like the Denver Broncos, but more importantly, he goes to a very bad situation. Now, lastly, let's not end the video on that recap because I know a lot of people are going to hate it. Let's talk about Jameis Winston, the projected starter for the New Orleans Saints this upcoming season. So the Saints, who probably needed a wide receiver too, another team that you can look at their wide receiver room and go, okay, yeah, they have Michael Thomas, an elite wide receiver at the NFL level, but beyond that, they really don't have anything. And please, Saints fans, don't be trying to tell me that Traquan Smith is an above average wide receiver too, right there with the Chicago fans talking about Darnell Mooney. But nonetheless, instead of drafting a wide receiver in this draft class, their first 4 picks were defensive end, linebacker, cornerback, and then lastly, QB. So you're going, okay, they literally got nothing of significance on the offensive side of the ball in the first 4 rounds of the 2021 NFL draft. They really didn't pursue any top tier wide receivers in free agency. So yeah, Jameis Winston has to be a loser of this offseason. Now, thank you guys. I really hope y'all enjoyed this video. I really hope y'all got something from it. Of course, go down there, drop a like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel. It helps us out a ton, and I will see y'all with the video tomorrow. I want to give a big thank you for everyone supporting the show in Benjamin, Bill, Jason, Matthew, Hutton, Sean, Freddie's Berto, Andy, Frederick, and Chris.